Hello guys and welcome back. So let's continue now and create something a bit more complex that shows how the data flows in Houdini, how to really use it. So I'm going to create a geometry node. I'm going to dive inside. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to hit tab and create a grid. Now one thing in new in Houdini 16 is that there's a few different ways to view the nodes, and if you hold down the R key and drag, it will display that node, so you don't have to click. You can just hold the R and then drag, and that will select the node. You can also hold down B and drag, and that will disable the node instead of using this. So you can do batch updates for multiple nodes. If you see me do this, and I haven't previously, sorry I didn't mention it earlier. Cool. So let's start with this grid. Gonna hit the P to open the floating properties. I'm gonna change it to 10 by 10, and I wanted to change it so that it starts at 0, 0. You can see the origin here. I want the axis to be one side to be fully at 0, 0. So I shifted the center. Okay. Now I'm going to create a poly extrude, and I want to change this into a box. Obviously we can start with a box, but I want to show you guys how to create more nodes. So I'm gonna set this to 10. We're extruding that box, and now we have a box created from this. Cool. So let's say we wanted to create a facade for this and add some windows. I want to delete one side of these guys, and if you guys remember, each face has a normal. So let me create a facet node and post compute normals. Let me change this to flat shaded with wireframe. If you view this, you can see each point is facing specific normals. Okay, and we can use that information to separate these points. Now let me show you guys. I want to isolate this face procedurally without having to select it. I can do this. I can select it, hit tab, and create a blast node, and then change it to delete non-selected. So I'm now left with this, but you see it's based on a primitive number. I don't want that. So I'm going to create a delete node, and this guy has a lot of options. One of them is the normal. So I'm going to go under normal and tick that on. Right now it says delete anything that is facing the z-axis, x, y, z, and the normals are wide open. And if we start narrowing this down, you can see it's deleting less and less. And now it deleted only the primitive that we're interested in. But we don't want that. We want the inverse of that. So I'm going to change this delete selected to delete non-selected. And now we're left with this. Now the reason I did it this way is because we can change we can change the input geometry and it will still work. See, now I've changed the input mesh to 10 by 10 and it just worked. Cool. So let's say we wanted to create some windows, make some holes. I'm going to create a divide node because right now this guy does not have any divisions, and we can add loops to it using a divide node. Now by default it's set to convex, so I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to tick on breaker polygon. Cool. So right now it says to 1. I can scale this and it's bigger, and I wanted to set it to 1.7, 1, 3.4, and 3.4. So we have these guys, and I don't want to. The idea is I want to copy a new geometry onto these points. So I want to isolate all the points that are at the center. I want to isolate all these guys. Now an easy way to do this is using a group node. And what group does is it basically groups the data and stores them into a let's say a collection or a group. You can see if I middle click, it says primitive groups. it's named group 1 and it has 18 primitives. Now I'm not interested in grouping primitives. I want to group points. Okay, you can see now it put all the points into one group. Point groups, group 1, that's the name. Let's say test. It created a test group and it has 28 points, and that's how much how much points we have in the mesh. But I'm not interested in all of it. I just want these guys, the one at the center. And luckily, this node has a feature called include by edge. And if we take that and click unshared edges, it's going to group everything that is at the edges or the boundary of the mesh. Okay, now let's hit create a blast node. And this node, or in anywhere in Houdini, you can see it says group here. You can give it a specific primitive number or a point number, or you can give it a group name. If you click here, it says you have a group available called test. So let's delete that. You can see we're left with everything at the center. Now I'm not interested in the primitives. I only want the points. So I'm going to create an add node. And with this add, I'm going to take on delete geometry but keep points. Cool. So that we've deleted everything except these points. Cool. So what I want to do next is I'm going to template this guy. Okay. And now we have these points here. What I want to do is I want to copy a geometry onto each of these points. And we can do that using a copy node. So let me create a sphere, and I'm going to create a copy node. Now there is multiple nodes, multiple types of copies. We're going to use the copy to points, and this takes any geometry and makes a copy and place it at those location. So if you hope over here, it says required primitives to copy this guy, and target points to copy to this guy. And now we have our spheres. But I don't want to use a sphere. I want to use a box. So let's create a box. Copy that. Cool. So now we have a geometry. I'm going to scale it. You can see we're creating some geometry windows. And I'm going to scale it this way. And now this is our original geometry. Maybe let's move it to this side. I can shift and hold, and it will drag the whole section from that node upward. Shift click and move. Cool. So now we have this data here. I'm going to create a Boolean node, and I want to compute the Booleans between these two guys. Actually, I don't want to compute the Booleans between all of this, just this face here. So let me move this and connect this. Let's take a look at the result. Okay, let's change this. Treat A as a surface. Let's see, subtract. And now we're subtracting this geometry from this, and that's the result of the Boolean. Let me change this. We can change it to solid, and that will combine both of them as well. So let's keep it this way. And then I want to bevel the edges of this guy. But right now you can see the mesh. This has a lot of n-gons, and the poly bevel to bevel these guys is not going to work well. So we need to triangleize this, and the best way to do this is using a divide node. Okay, and that added the proper triangulation to the mesh. And this is not a perfect ideal mesh, but it's going to work better with the bevel. So let's create a bevel node. And let's set this to 1. It's too much. 0.1. And if you select the node and hit enter, you can see what part of the mesh it's affecting. Let's set it to 0.1. And you can see it's affecting everything now. It has this ignore flat edges, which we can tick, and this will basically ignore any flat edges, and it knows which one to pick. So let's change the mode to round. Let's change this to 4, and now we have some beveling in there on the windows. Let's change the wireframe, the preview mode, to flat shaded, and let's create a null. I don't want to see that green in the viewport. And now we have opening on the mesh. Cool. Let's continue. I want to create a boundaries for this. I want to create something here. So we need to find where that data is available. So for example, we can go back to this geometry here. Okay, and we can we don't want everything. We don't want all this geometry. I want everything that is facing upward. I want everything that is facing this direction. So I'm going to copy this delete node, which we've used before, and I'm going to connect it here. So now we're deleting only these guys. Okay, and I'm not interested in all of this. I just want the edges of these guys. So let's create an extrude node, and see what this gives us. So it's given us that. We can do an inset, push them outward. And here you can see it has options for what part of the mesh it keeps or it generates. Let's turn off output front, and this will only leave the newly created mesh. So we have some inset there. Let's do it like that. Let's extrude it one more. I want to add some thickness. Okay. And let's do another extrude, but this time I don't want the extrude to happen on all the faces. I want the extrude to happen on a specific area. So with this poly extrude, you can add groups, and it will group all the faces. It will put groups for the various extrusion steps. So I can group the sides and the front into separate parts. Now we can create a blast node to see which part is that. And here I want to delete everything except the extrude front. So I take on delete non-selected. And then same for this. I want to delete everything but the extrude sides. Cool. So we have the interior here and the front face. Oh, I think this is great. So I'm going to create a poly extrude, and I'm only going to run it on the extrude side group. And how we do that is here under the group, I can tell it to only affect the extrude, sorry, not the extrude front, but the extrude side. And now if we do a small inset, we have that, and we can add some extrusion. And now we have some surroundings that we can use. I'm going to delete these two guys. And we have this. So let's merge everything together. Let's add a merge node and combine this. Now these guys are away from the window, and I'm going to add a transform node and move them back. Cool. So we have something surrounding these windows. Now I want to add some kind of wood here in these windows. So let's do that. So like we did the copy of the boxes, I'm going to take these faces. I'm going to create a null just to keep it organized. Okay, and I want to add some divisions on these guys. I'm going to create a divide node, untick the convex polygon, and use the breaker polygons. And I don't want any X or Z repetitions. I only want something along the y-axis. So I'm gonna set these guys to a high number so we never see any repetition from those axes. And I'm gonna scale this down until I get a lot of primitives. Something like that. 0.1, okay. And I want to separate these primitives. I want to separate these polygons. Right. I can do that using a facet node. And connect that. And here it says unique polygons. And if I take that, it's going to, let's take a look. Here we have 240 primitives. And here we have, here we have 240. Same. Oh yes, yeah, it will be the same. Sorry, we have 500 points. And now we have 960 points. And the reason for that, let me show you. If I select one of these guys and move it, you can see it's attached to the mesh. If I do it after the facet with the unique points turned on, I will be able to move these guys separately. And what I want to do is I want to scale them based on their local center. So I want to scale each one of them and rotate it. I can do that using a primitive node, and this allows me to do a transformation based on local to each primitive. I'm going to take on do transform. I'm going to scale them on the y-axis. You can see now each one is individual. And I want to rotate them as well along the x-axis this way. Maybe the other way. Cool. Now we have big gaps between them. That's fine. Let's create an extrude. Give them some thickness. Something like that. And output back so they're fully filled. And I want to make a copy of them. So I'm going to create a transform node. And let's merge this result with the transform. And let's move it. Cool. So now we have a duplicate and we're filling all the windows. Let's combine this with our final result and see what we have. Okay, we need to move them as well. So let's copy this transform, put it here, and let's move them in further. So we have some windows, some wood structure inside. Okay, let's continue. Now we're going to do something a bit more complex. We saw how we have these guys, these points. I want to create some kind of poles coming out of here, like a rail or a bridge holding underneath each of these guys. We have these points here. What if we connect them in a straight line and then add a lot of points to that line and then copy a primitive that is pointing outward? Let's do that. Let's connect all these guys with a primitive. Create a line between them. Now how do we do that? We can use an add node. Then this node has a lot of, it can do a lot of stuff. The name is really tricky when it comes to Houdini, and I'll probably talk about this in a separate video, but the best way to memorize what nodes does what is to use them, is to practice with them and create some examples. And the purpose of this workshop is to give you guys the opportunity to see many nodes in Houdini used in so many different ways to create things, and you have to practice, memorize the names, memorize what they do, and then you will start to come up with new ways of using them and combining them. So I'm going to create an add node here. I'm going to go to the polygon tab, and under the by polygon tab you can see it says all points, and now it's creating a primitive between that connects all the points. I don't want that. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to say groups of endpoints, and I can tell it how much points I want to connect at one time, and the number for that is 5 because it's half of the points that we have here, so 5 points. Cool. So if I click, you can see we still have the same points. Now I want to resample this, and what a resample does, it creates resamples the geometry and adds more points to it. This is perfect for any edges or any lines or anything like that. So I'm gonna create a resample, and it's resampling the mesh and adding a point every 0.1 unit based on the length. I think this is great. Let's leave it at that. And I'm gonna make a copy of this box, and I'm gonna create a new copy node. Copy 2 points. I want to copy this new mesh into these guys. And now we have multiple copies. Now obviously this is big, so let's scale it down. Something like that. And let's move it. Sorry, not move it. Extend it along this axis. And set this to 1. And let's move this to 0.5. So it moves half a unit. But I wanted to make this extendable. I want to make this flexible. So every time I change this automatically computes. The easiest way to do this is by copying a primitive and pasting it into another one and telling it to always use this value and run an extra math on it if we wanted to. So I can copy parameters and then come to the field that I'm interested in, right click, paste relative reference. Okay. And now let me delete this. And now it's linking itself to that value. If I click here, it will show me the expression. If I click one more time, it shows me the result. I'm gonna look at the expression and type in divide by 2, because I always want half of this to be here. Okay, you can see it here now, it's 0.5, and I can keep increasing this, and you see it's changing as well. So it's always in the correct location. So let's combine this here. And in Houdini 16, they introduced the dot concept. So I'm going to connect this wire. You can see it's crossing everything. I don't want that. I can hold the Alt key and drag, and it will create a dot. And this makes it easier to view the graph. Cool. So now we have lines in there, and we just have to transform them. Let's move them down. Actually, I don't want to transform the boxes. I want to transform them right after I did the add, so the resample recomputes correctly. Same as well for the result here. So everything gets updated accordingly. And let's see. Translate 0. I'm not sure why. Yeah, the resample is changing based on the scale. So let's put it back after the resample, so the result doesn't change. And let's scale them like that. But there, you can see now I'm scaling these guys, these lines here. But they are not scaling based on the center. And what I want to do is I'm going to create a transform node. Click this move to centroid. This will place the points at the center. Create another transform that I'm going to use for the scale. So now I can scale them like that. And then apply the inverse of that transformation. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and tick on invert transformation, and this will move it back. So I've done the transform at the local axis, and I can use this to move it here. Let's move it down, and let's scale it in. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's flickering. Shouldn't be doing that, but you guys get the idea. So you can see we've created various different parts of geometry. We have a wall, we made some openings in it, and then we made some extra geometry in there. Cool. Now, one very important aspect of Houdini is reusing the data, and you can see how it's splitting here, and I'm processing various data in different ways. This guy, for example, is being used for the Boolean, it's being used to create the windows, and so on and so forth. And this is one of the main core of Houdini and proceduralism in Houdini. So it's very important to make sure that you guys reuse data like that. And I'm going to select these nodes and hit Shift L to align them together. And now that we have everything dynamic, I'm going to disconnect this, right click, disconnect. I don't want this section here. And I'll explain why in a second. And you saw that we've started off with this extrude node. We've based off everything from this guy, based on this guy, based on this extrude. So let's say we wanted to increase the extrude. Nice. So it's working. So every time we increase the count reasonably, it adds a new floor. Let's set it to 20. Cool. So let's set it to 40. Nice. And we can change the divide here. This is the guide that we're using to create the copies. We can change this. So let me show you how this will affect the result. Let's say this. You can see we can add more windows, and we can reduce the amount if we wanted to. We can go to the box itself, scale the windows. And because everything is driven from that box, you can see everything is scaling up correctly and nicely. And not that. You can make them small like that. And now we're lucky because everything is working. Because we've made everything procedural, it doesn't rely on any primitive numbers. But this guy was flickering. It was not behaving correctly. So this approach is not ideal for this example. You can see that they are not placed correctly as well. Let's scale them down a bit. You can see we don't have we have one copy facing one way, the other copy facing the other way. So this part needs to be revisited, and we need to find a better way to do this approach. And I think that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.